Hello, welcome to a silent ovation. My name is Justin McLaughlin, and this is sponsored by Ovation English, the world's first language learning program based on the performing arts. Spirit fingers. Love it, love it. So, yeah, welcome to episode number 2. I'm excited. I got really hyped up after watching the first episode and saying, okay, I look like a douche. I sound even worse, but shit, who cares? I did it, and that's the main thing is just doing it, because, that's a mistake that I feel that, sorry, I'm just adjusting this, that a lot of people make is when everybody has a dream, everybody has a purpose in life, and everybody can feel it. But when people look at it and they see, okay, ooh, I want to be a dancer, I want to be, an actor, I want to be, a scientist, rocket science, or whatever, go into space. Everybody can do it. Everything's possible. The thing is, people fear a failure. They fear that failure, like, oh, I'm gonna fail. I'm gonna. Yeah, of course you're gonna fail. It's the first time you're doing it. It's the purpose. You fail. I always tell my students, if you're not failing, you're not trying. So you gotta really fail. You gotta jump into the fire and fail. So that's pretty much what I've done. I mean, my feet are like coal now because that's all I've done is jump in the fire. So I wanted to really explain how Ovation English came about and where it all started from. And basically, it started when I was 5 in kindergarten. And what happened was I went through kindergarten, and the only thing I really can remember about kindergarten was a girl that I was just in love with, and I can't remember her name. I'm sure I'll remember her name sometime, but Dawn Trombitas. Dawn Trombitas. I was in love in kindergarten. I was infatuated. All I did was think about her and how beautiful she was. I mean, I was 5 years old, and I was like infatuated with this girl. I wanted to. I just, I thought about, how do I give her a ring, or I mean, crazy things. I don't remember anything about ABCs or anything. I don't remember even teachers talking. But after kindergarten, after the year of kindergarten, my mother told me during the summer, she was like, look, you're going into first grade, but you're going into special ed. And I was like, what do you mean? What's special ed? She goes, well, you're going to be placed in a different classroom than everybody else. Because, the teacher said that the teacher had told her, which my mother didn't tell me until last year, that my teacher had told her that your son is autistic. And my mother didn't tell me that. I think she was, at that time, autistic. I think people really looked at that as being mentally challenged, severely mentally challenged. And so she kept that from me, and she just said, you're just different. You're just different, always. You're just different. So I took that. Okay, I'm different. But I was pissed. Like there was something inside of me that said, I'm not stupid. Like I really was. I remember telling my mother, I was crying, like, what? What do you mean? And, she had said, well, you don't speak in class. The teachers ask you and you just don't respond. And you don't understand what they're teaching. And I was like, I'm like, I don't even remember learning anything, like, what does that mean? So first grade started and I was just, humiliated, because you go to homeroom for like 10 minutes and then you go and you go into this other classroom down the hall, special ed. And some of the kids in special ed had severe issues, and others just, were just there because of behavioral issues. But everybody there was basically a throwaway. I mean, if you were in special ed, that meant you were a throwaway. And my whole time as, in elementary school, I learned nothing. I mean, I really, I don't remember a thing about anything. The only thing that I remember from elementary school was fifth grade in Mr. Wallen's class. He was my homeroom teacher, but I had, I was in special ed. But anything that the homeroom class did, the special ed class would be a part of it. So he had a playwright kind of contest, where every kid would kind of write a little play, and like the best top three were chosen to be acted out for the school. So me being so into music at that time, in fifth grade, because that's when I was really starting to really enjoy music. Um, I was, and I love the story of Jack and the Beanstalk, just because this kid, just was climbing up and he found this new world, and I think that's always what I wanted, was just find the world that I belonged in. So I just remember being like, hey, I'm just gonna, change this up, and instead of being Jack and the Beanstalk, it's Jazz and the Radio Stalk. So everything was basically based on music, and mine was chosen, and it wasn't totally original, obviously. I took something, but the fact that, I guess I did a good job with it and people related to it, and I had some comedy in there. I do remember that. Um, that was a big achievement for me. And that was even more for me to say, hey, I don't belong here. I don't belong in special ed. Look at this. Nobody in special ed did this. Why am I, ask me to do multiplication? No. Asked me division? No, couldn't do that. I mean, couldn't do it. Sciences didn't get it. History didn't get. I mean, I just couldn't get it. But anything to do with performance and arts, it was just like bang, got it. So so then I go into sixth grade, into middle school, and of course I'm just changing. Everything is changing in my life. My hormones are changing. Everything is changing, and I really I'm going to backtrack a little bit. I came from a house that was really not well. Let's just say I don't want to say too much about any bad things or whatever, but you know my father, whose name was Neil McLaughlin, he drove a bus for in the city of Bronx, in the south side of the Bronx. Pretty much, he had the worst route. He was an alcoholic, very bad alcoholic. He was very abusive to his children. Um, he wasn't just not a nice guy. He was just not happy. He was a sick person, and he just wasn't happy. And I learned later in life that he was, instead of, let's just say I was deathly afraid of this guy. Always. I never felt any love for the guy. I just felt like, totally afraid. To the point where I remember being very young and coming home from school, and the first thing I would do was hide underneath my bed, because I knew, because he started work very early in the morning, so he got home at pretty much the same time as I did from school. And the first thing he would do is, because after his shift, he would pound down a bunch of beers, come home, drink a couple of screwdrivers, and then pass out. And so I was waiting under the bed like some wild animal, waiting for the coast to clear from all the predators. And once he passed out, I was free. I went out, and I was out all from, whatever, 3 o'clock till God knows when. But I hated being there. I hated living with him. He was just a horrible, horrible person at the time. Now I know he was just very sick, and I wish I could speak to him now about it, but and tell him it's okay. But the thing is, he killed himself with alcohol purposely, because that's what his mother did. His mother, with his mother, they took away the booze, and so she started drinking rubbing alcohol, mouthwash, anything that had any type of alcohol, she would do that. She would drink it, and she just, it killed her. Alcohol is just pure poison. So, and when I was 5, my parents divorced, so I was lived, and my mother just took off. She just kind of abandoned us to kind of find her life, and she left us with him, and that was, he was upset that she left. He loved her, but he just hated the fact that she left, and she ended up meeting this guy named Chuck Pateman, and he just hated it, and he took it out on us. He just took it out on us, and she came back 3 years later, and we moved out. Finally, got away from him, and I thought, things were going to be better. I mean, look, things were better, but my mother, my mother was, she was my mother, but she was never a parent. She was like the fun babysitter. That's what she wanted. She just, whatever we wanted to eat, whatever we could eat, whatever we wanted to do, we did. She was like the fun babysitter, because I found out that she was also a drug addict. She loved speed, taking pills. And she was a big time smoker, chain smoker. And basically, I was my mother's little buddy. She loved watching horror movies, and when I was very young, she was like, "Jesse, come watch, Friday the 13th with me. Come watch Halloween." And I'm like, "All right, I'll watch. It's cool." Not realizing that I was going to have the worst nightmares for years and years to come because of that. She didn't like vegetables. She didn't like fruits. She just really ate sweets. So there was always like Entenmann's, donuts, cakes, always like cookie dough. If I to eat was usually bologna, hot dogs, peanut butter and jelly. If I didn't make my lunch, I wouldn't go to school with anything. I had to make my lunch. If I didn't wake myself up, I didn't get up for school. So she was my mother, but she wasn't my parent. I could never call her my parent. She was a lot of fun. I mean, she cared a lot, but she wasn't a loving person. She didn't know how to express love. And she's got her issues. She had her issues as well. But her main thing was she liked to get high on speed. That was her thing. And I remember once I got to be 12 and 13. Well, even at 9, she was giving me cigarettes. And I was smoking cigarettes. I still smoke them because of that. I love them. I love them. I hate them, but whatever. But she was a big influence on that. Once I started smoking pot, which I just, nobody really gave it to me. Nobody had offered. I just was like, I need something. And I remember I was living with my mother and her new husband, and he had kids and older kids. And I was looking through their shit, and I found some weed. I didn't even know. I knew it from Cheech and Chong movies, and I saw them, put in paper and roll it up, and I rolled it up and smoked it, and I was like, okay, this is cool, all right. And I just kept going on, I kept from about the age of 12 to this day. I still smoke cannabis every day. And then, obviously once I was, going out all the time, and, I'd come home, my eyes red and stuff like that. And my mother was like, "What are you on?" And I'm like, "Smoking reefer," like, she's like, "Can you find me Black Beauties?" And I'm like, "What the hell are Black Beauties?" She's like, "It's speed. It says, great pills." And that's when I kind of realized she's fucked up. Asking her, 13, 14-year-old kid to find some drugs for her. Yeah, it was. I grew up in a very strange world of just. It was just very strange. It was very strange. But once I pretty much got out of high school, I just knew I had to find my own way, and I didn't really know how to learn. I had no idea how to learn. Whatever I did was just because I'd learned talents. I really couldn't read a book. I couldn't read it. I would read like a page and not have any clue of what I was reading at the end. and it would take me like, I'd have to read it over 4 or 5 times just to get just an idea of what it was about. Um, so I was, in high school, they didn't really give me many chances to succeed. Uh, the only good thing they did was they offered me BOCES, which was a tech program, part-time technical school, which I took carpentry and it was great. So, and as I said in the first episode, they didn't offer me SATs, because I learned later that um, if they had offered me SATs, I would have bombed it, and it would have given them a bad look to the state. And the reason why they took away the maths and the sciences so that we would pass. Because if they had any kids that didn't graduate, even a small percentage, the state wouldn't give them taxes or the amount of revenue for the schools. So they made sure that all the special ed kids passed, no matter what, even if it meant taking away the hard classes instead of, really pushing us to learn. But that was the time. You can't blame. They didn't know. They had no idea, and especially a kid who, with autism, is just they had no idea. And they also knew that really crazy shit was happening at my house, and they just said, yeah, okay, you okay? You all right, Justin? I'm like, yeah. Because in my life, I didn't think my life was different. I just thought everybody went through this. So I didn't think anything of it. Um, but the one thing I did, I am glad I did. I didn't enjoy it with sports. I didn't, I played football and I was a wrestler and I played baseball for a while. Um, I was good at baseball until about 13, and then I lost my hand-eye coordination. I couldn't hit the ball, just couldn't hit the ball. And in football, I was, big dude, so I was a lineman, and uh, I liked it, but I liked it because I had a certain coach named Bob Lucrezia, and he was just a motherfucker, but he moved me, man. He moved me, and he saw my talent, and he really focused on that. And then, he left, and I lost the passion for it. But and even in wrestling, I wasn't really given a chance because I was kind of stupid, slow, didn't really understand, didn't have that, go get 'em attitude, that killer instinct. I was a shy kid and, always afraid. So I didn't have that, "Ugh, I want to kill you," you know. But the one thing I did learn from all that was discipline, man. Was discipline. Getting in shape and staying in shape and, doing your best, or trying your best at least, and that always stayed with me. So once I graduated high school, um, I went into the workforce. Well, I went to New England Tech for 2 years, and I came out and I just started working. I started working in a pizza shop first because I just was like, yeah, you know what, I want to do something fun first, before I really get into carpentry, and I love pizza, of course. Who doesn't, living in New York? So I made pizza for a while, and I knew that my old man was a pizza maker too, so I was like, yeah, this is cool. Did that for a while, and then I started getting into carpentry. And once I got into carpentry and really started understanding the craft and using, understanding all the machines and tools and how to use them, and I just started to get this really great work ethic, and I just excelled. And I just kept getting promoted to other companies and other things until I just finally got my own company. Um, but this whole time I'm working, like when I would do woodwork, because I really loved finish work and doing cabinetry, which is the most difficult part of carpentry. It's funny, whenever I get into a talent or a skill, I always want to do the hardest part. I always want to get into the hardest thing of it. It's like when I started to play music, and I started, my fingers would start moving the right way. Instead of saying like, hey, I want to learn rock, I want to learn blues, I was like, no, I want to do jazz, man. I want to learn jazz, like just because I love listening to it. Didn't mean, I mean, I had no idea how the complexity of it, but so, I just always went for the hardest thing, and which is why I failed so much. I always went for the hardest discipline, So in carpentry, I just, I just didn't like the idea of framing houses. I'm like, that's just kind of, just building walls, 16 on center, and it's like, ugh, boring, But to build, the staircases, or to build the cabinets, or to build, the really cool stuff in there, Crawford ceilings and all that. I was like, that's cool. That really what makes the house have personality. Doing all the moldings, crown moldings, chair rails, all that stuff. I was really good at it. But, anytime, I had to read something or learn something, it was just hard. College was difficult. College was not, I mean, I went to a tech school, and which is supposed to be super easy, but it was really difficult because I didn't have the skills to really learn or know how to learn intellectually. I learn really fast and really well with my fingers, but not with my brain. So, I'd always try to read books once in a while, and it was, I, you know, I remember, reading something by Anne Rice was one of my first books, and I was like, something about vampires, and it was a good book, but it just took me so long to get through it because I'd read a chapter and I wouldn't remember a goddamn thing about the chapter. I'm a good reader where I can read aloud and I can be very articulate, but the comprehension was not there, just I couldn't get it, because I'd be reading and my brain would be off in five other directions. Even though I'm still reading, I can hear myself reading the words in my head, but I'm in other lands and other places. So it was really difficult. And it really bummed me out because I really wanted to know what the hell the deal was, because I didn't know about what the teachers had told my mother, that I was autistic, she didn't tell me. So, it was a long time of me trying, like, what the, just having that, not like, because it didn't really bother me that much, because obviously I was successful, I was an artist, so I could use my hands, I could think with my hands, I could be intelligent with my hands. I didn't have to be a scholar. So but I just wanted to know, just so it could help me out, but, you don't really think of those things back then. There was no social media. There was no nothing, I didn't even know. I don't think I ever heard of autism, so that didn't even come into my thought, So, as I said, it wasn't until last year when I went back to New York for 2 years and I saw my mother for the first time in a long time. She had just, because she's kind of lost her brain, of course, because, I mean, you smoke your whole life and you do uppers your whole life and you eat cake and crap all day, you're going to lose your shit. So, she was just saying, it was she's like kind of at the end of her rope, so I think she's trying to make amends with everything maybe. So, she, a lot of things that she was saying that she had never said, like, I was a good mother, right? I was a good mom. And, I didn't want to. She's like 75. She looks like 150, to be honest. But, I never blamed anybody. I could never blame anybody. Anything that happened to me is because I made the decisions. I could never say, oh, because my mother didn't give me this or my father would. I just didn't think of it like that. I always saw people that had less, and I was like, yeah, look at them, they're fine. So I just did that. But but so she was asking me, was I a good mother? And I was like, yeah, we had a lot of fun. Yeah, Ma, we had a lot of fun. And she's like, and I still don't believe that teachers said that when you had that you were autistic. I mean, clear as day. Like I'm like, what? She goes, yeah. Then she kind of was like, kind of caught herself, you know, and I was like, "You mean the teachers told you I was autistic?" Yeah, but I never believed them. I never believed them. I just thought that that was just silly. They just didn't know. And I'm like, and that just as soon as she said that word, it just everything just it was just a whirlwind. Because you think back on everything. You think back on everything, every decision you ever made, anything that's ever happened in your life, and you go, was that because of that? And yeah, there's a lot of it that has to do with it. So, and that's another reason why I'm doing this podcast, because I'm not only is this, I'm like a cat. I've had so many lives, and I feel like this is like one of my last ones. But it's strange because it's like I'm really starting from the beginning, because I'm getting to know myself as a neurodivergent, and what what made me who I am, because I don't, there's a lot of things that I can look back and be like, yeah, totally, 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 totally. A lot of things that I look back and I'm like, nah, I don't know, was that it or was that not it? But I know my passion for music and the arts definitely stems from that, because that's pretty much how I learned. That's how I learned, was through the performing arts. I would just have these visions, seeing, listening to music, watching a movie, and I'd have these visions in my head, and I go, okay, I got to do that. Whatever I saw in my head, that was like, that's what I got to do. And going after those visions was my process of learning. You go through these things. That's how I learned. And it was just complete failures. That's all I did, was just fail, fail, fail. Because everything I saw in my head, I did. Even I didn't think, wow, that's grand. You want to be a stage musician? You want to do the jazz musician? I just said, okay, that's the thing. Not like, wow, that's really high. That's a high. No, I was just like, that's it. So of course, not having any prior experience or anything, I just jumped in the fire and failed miserably over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. Until I finally got it. And once I got it, that was it. But it really created this really unique thing for me where I became really good at failing and really good at suffering. I could go through the worst feelings and of failure or hardship, and just kind of just, okay, I'm done, ready to go, let's go. I just did it over and over again. I would hit bottom and then I'd just crawl right back up. And I realized that I was really good at that. I was really good at suffering. I was really good at getting the shit kicked out of me by life and just getting back up, And I really started to relate that to Rocky, because this was a guy who was not a great fighter, but he had the heart of a lion, and he wasn't somebody who would just knock people out. He would get knocked down over and over again, but every time he got knocked down, he'd get back up. So the person that's kicking the shit out of him, eventually he's like, I'm giving him the best I got. I'm kicking his ass, and this dude won't stay down. And eventually, that drives fear into the opponent, And that's how Rocky became successful. And I always felt like that was me. That whatever I got into, I knew I was going to get beat. I was going to get beat down, and but I knew I could get back up. I knew I could always get back up, no matter what, no matter what. And I do thank my upbringing for that. It taught me a lot. It taught me how to survive. I have an older brother who's 5 years older than me, and he was a fucking asshole, and typical asshole older brother who just tortured me every day. And just, for him it was funny, and for me it was torture. I hated it, but I built a lot of scar tissue from that, and that also helped me. So I was lucky. I took all the crap in my life and I made it worth something, you know. Instead of being like, oh, I can't do this because my mom, my daddy, and blah, blah, blah. No, I was just like, all right, yeah, it sucked, but that's in the past. Got to keep going, And you realize through all that stuff, you learn a lot. You learn a lot through failure. You learn a lot by getting your ass kicked. There's no better education for me. Um, so being understanding myself as a neurodivergent now, I can understand how that played into creating Ovation English, because I remember I pretty much wrote the entire program in one day. I just took all the things that I had done in all the schools that I had worked in, doing the Broadway shows, doing the little paloozas, with the students, with the tablets, my own experience as a performer, as a carpenter, building things. So this was something I did, and I in a day I just hyper focused and wrote it all out. And now, and I had a friend that I worked with in Menor, Zach, and he would always say, "Man, you have a crazy mind. Whatever you think of, you just do, and you can make things happen." And I had known that. Like, I had known that, if I really put my mind to it, I can kind of make things happen. And once he read, the script for Ovation English, back then it was Ovation Productions, but he was like, "Holy shit, dude! I don't know how you did this or what. This is really," because it was very complex and had a lot of detailed. So, I'm so thankful that, you know, if the autism is what helped me to get by in life and just say, whatever, yeah, I'm hurt, but so what? I got to keep going. If it did that, I'm so thankful I have it. I'm so thankful that I am a neurodivergent, because it's made me who I am, and it's given me it's basically given me all my talents, and I'm so thankful for it. I'm just still trying to understand it and see how it affected me in certain ways, especially in my family life. But yeah, it's, and I'm sure a lot of you who've had later diagnosis have felt the same. You're just kind of reliving everything, seeing like, ooh, okay, that's where it came in there. But yeah, so I'm very thankful for that, and I'm very thankful that for this podcast, that I'm able. I feel so much better. I mean, it's only episode 2, and just being able to just say this. I've never said these things to anybody. So it's nice. It's really nice, and I really I really appreciate the technology of this, and it's given me a chance to speak my mind. And once again, this is a silent ovation. My name is Justin McLaughlin. I am the creator of Ovation English, who we are sponsored by. And once again, this episode is dedicated to my children, Ivana, Gianna, and Liam. I love you guys, and I'm just glad you're happy. And so that's it for episode 2 of A Silent Ovation. I'm really psyched. I'm going to get ready to do number 3. And then number 4, and then number 5, and number 6. I mean, it was so hard just to get number 1 done. I'm thinking in my head over and over, how do I do it, how do I do it? So finally, I got it done, and I'm doing it. So until next time, I'll see you later. Maybe not. I don't know. If you want to, you don't have to. But peace.